Hey guys, just a couple of things before we get started. This episode, entitled Right for Your Life, is the Season 1 finale. If you haven't listened to previous episodes in Season 1, go back and check them out. I've had some amazing guests with real insight talking about how living in an online world is affecting our lives. Just a bit of a warning about today's episode. My guests and I will be talking about their mental health journeys. This includes personal struggles, including some discussion about suicide. These can be difficult conversations to listen to, and if you find the topic triggering, maybe you should skip this episode. Also, if you're struggling with depression and/or suicidal thoughts, there's always help just one call away. The phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. With that, thanks so much for listening to Season 1. Season 2 is already in the works, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
I suffer from severe anxiety. Well, I've really had mental illness for most of my life, honestly.
So it was kind of off and on seeing a counsellor since age 9 until now, really.
I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 19 after a bout with depression put me on antidepressants, and I went very manic very quickly.
It's about a year and a half ago now. My husband died suddenly and unexpectedly. Dealing with like PTSD and everything has been a challenge, so it's been very chaotic.
When you hear the term mental health or mental illness, what comes to mind? The culture and perception around mental health issues still carries a lot of misconceptions and a lot of stigma. We seem to only talk about mental health in the broadest of senses. We talk about it when it comes to gun control. We talk about it when discussing drug abuse and the opioid epidemic. We talked briefly about mental health after the high-profile suicides of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and after the countless mass shootings and other acts of violence our country has seen. Mental health is important. Working on or maintaining our mental health is something we should regularly do. A while back, I was talking to a psychologist colleague of mine. Well, not so much talking to him, but complaining about a difficult case I had. In somewhat random fashion, he asked me if I brush my teeth every day. I said, yes, thinking maybe I had bad coffee breath. He then asked if I take a shower every day. I said, yeah, doc, I take a shower every day. What's your point? He paused, maybe for dramatic effect, and said, what do you do every day to maintain your mental health? To this day, I wish I had an awesome answer to that question. Instead, I responded with a noise that probably resembled an, and then he interrupted. He said, so you care more about your teeth than you do your mental health. That's kind of messed up. This conversation has stuck with me for a long time. Why do we neglect, minimize, and cover up our emotions? Especially the bad ones. I think it's because there's still a lot of stigma and misunderstanding around mental health struggles. Today's episode is about a few folks who have made it their mission to break down the stigma around mental health by writing about their struggles online and giving an honest and real voice to those with mental illness. By telling their stories, their hope is to change perceptions and normalize personal struggles. My name is Chris Morandi, and this is Old Cove Road.
If I told you what I'm really thinking, you wouldn't listen for long. Yeah, you'd ask me if I'd been drinking. No, I tell you, you couldn't be more wrong.
Talking honestly about your mental health in public is one of the bravest things you can do. The following are a few accounts of mental health journeys so far. While all these conversations were had separately, they've been edited together for storytelling purposes.
Well, I've really had mental illness for most of my life, honestly. As a child, I was very anxious, and I had insomnia and would often stay up all night without being able to sleep. And honestly, that has continued into adulthood, but I never really understood what was going on or was really diagnosed until I was 18, but I noticed the symptoms when I was 15 years old of schizophrenia. And I didn't think it was schizophrenia at first. I felt like I had really good hearing, or, I was hearing things I shouldn't be. And it sort of grew into, this isn't right, I can't see anybody, so what's going on?
This is a common occurrence for young folks experiencing mental health issues. First signs are often hard to recognize. Sometimes we ignore or minimize difficulties, or we're living through traumatic experiences and just trying to get by without realizing the toll it's taking. Lydia talks about how she finally got some help.
Yeah, I knew I had anxiety in college, and I attempted to get medicated for my anxiety and depression when I was in college, and my body responded weirdly to the medication, so I just kind of quit it and forgot about it entirely. And then when I graduated college, I didn't really have like a plan set up, because I was just coming in running on empty as I finished college, because I was also really sick with celiac at the time. And I had just gotten diagnosed with celiac right as I was graduating college, so that was stressful. So I kind of took some time off to like regroup, and then I got to the point where I wasn't wanting to leave the house ever, and I realized I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't normal. And my husband actually called the doctor for me. I was too anxious to even call the doctor. I was like, I know I have depression, and I didn't even realize it was all anxiety either. Like, I knew some of it was anxiety because I didn't want to leave the house and stuff, and I would get nervous about driving and things like that. So he had to call the doctor for me and set up an appointment for me to go to the doctor, and then proceed to take me to the doctor because he knew I wouldn't take myself.
Lydia was lucky to have a supportive person in her life, willing to take the necessary steps to get her the help that she needed. For many, the path to mental health recovery is much more difficult. Maybe it's because we feel the urge to keep it all inside, or maybe access to appropriate services is hard to find. Sometimes, help doesn't arrive on time.
About 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years on September 5th, I tried to take my life. And I was in a coma for about 2 days.
Oh, wow.
And I woke up, and out here in California, it's called 5150 here, where you have to go into a hospital afterwards, like a psych ward. And so I went, and when I was there, I don't even know how to explain it, but I just started looking at like the people I was around in that psych ward and the healthcare professionals. And I started looking at things a little bit differently, because I saw the way other patients were being talked to and how we were being dealt with. And I kind of started noticing on a different level the kind of stigma that exists everywhere. Like, you don't have to be some person who doesn't understand mental illness. The thoughts of what a person with a mental illness or mental health condition can exist in anybody. These preconceived notions. And it felt like they looked at us like we were less than them. And I always say it felt like there was no care in healthcare. And I remember getting out and being just very, like, dealing with things with my family and their views of my suicide attempt. And, the automatic jump for most people was, oh, it was the bipolar, or it was the medication. Your medication was off, or, something directly dealing with the bipolar. And I had kind of realized after the attempt, talking with my therapist, that I had been going through a situational depression for months before the attempt. And of course, like the bipolar mind, whatever, it exaggerates whatever you're feeling. But it was very much things that I had kind of let build inside of me for years, that I kind of shirked off as the bipolar disorder. And I realized that I had spent a good portion of my time over-identifying with bipolar and self-stigmatizing with bipolar, and it led me to ignore all these other parts of my mental health.
Reaching out to loved ones and therapists to talk about your mental health can be really hard. It takes guts to allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of others. The stigma surrounding mental health issues makes talking about emotions and personal struggles way harder than it should be. Arez and I got a little off track during our conversation, but our gripes about how people perceive bipolar disorder perfectly speaks to this point.
Well, so number one, I think we did a disservice when we switched from manic depressive to bipolar. Because bipolars really exist on the spectrum. I mean, there's the manic and the depression. You can view them as poles, but, I mean, technically they are poles, but it's not like about happy and sad, because sadness is not depression and happiness is not mania. Mania can be a lot of people paint mania as this like, oh, I'm getting stuff done and everything's great and the sun is shining and the sun is on crack and it's wonderful here. Oh my God. And it's just endless words and thoughts and greatness and wonderfulness and puppy dogs on, candy canes. I don't know. But like, it's not. For me, it's not. I mean, yeah, maybe initially mania is, there is that boost of energy and everything is, there's a euphoria to it, but it goes to a very dark place for me, where the thoughts are, while the thoughts are running, they're not happy thoughts. They're not, good thoughts. And for me personally, I tend to have blackouts during my mania. So it's not, mania doesn't equal happiness. And in general, we should probably start not like confusing depression and sadness because they're not the same. But I mean, there's so many things I heard. I actually did a video once where I called it "Can You Not? Because I Can't," regarding certain phrases or things that people say, and one of them is like, "Oh yeah, that's so bipolar. The weather is so bipolar," and I'm like, because my thinking automatically goes to the disorder and not like the scientific idea of like polarities or like weather or whatever. I'm always like, no, it's not. No, it was raining 1 second, but then clouds moved in. There was it wasn't boom, boom.
Right.
And it's not this harsh, 1 second you're this, 1 second you're that. That gets more into the different types of, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, cyclothymia, where it's not just boom, boom. And that's the technical term, boom, boom.
Right.
And I think I made someone made a connection between Jekyll and Hyde and bipolar once. Mm-hmm. And that bothered me because, I've read the book.
Right.
And I was like, well, are you saying one is the devil and one is an angel? Because I don't think mania or depression are angelic in any way. Or are you saying this is, a demon within us? And all this stuff. There's all these misconceptions of what it is. And I just kind of feel like the name itself lends to it.
Interesting. I haven't thought of the name specifically as kind of the cause, but it would be a lot more difficult to say this weather is manic depressive.
Right?
That
would really not make more, even in my head, I was like, that makes no sense. And then I was like, wait, bipolar doesn't make sense either.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But I personally even have issues, and this becomes like a huge debate, and everybody goes, it's semantics. I don't say I am bipolar.
Right.
I don't use that phrase. I used to. But I felt like eventually that was just me. That was saying I am the bipolar. Mm-hmm. And to me, it started helping me, to see that it's just something I live with. It's a part of me. But I always say, if I'm anything, I'm like a warrior because I'm fighting. Mm-hmm. So it often gets into this huge debate about wording with that one.
Yeah.
Within the community.
Right. And if you put it in different terms, it makes no sense. I am cancer. Nobody says that.
That's exactly. You're nobody even says, you don't say I am diabetes, I am diabetic.
Right.
Right? Right. And even when you say I am diabetic, I don't know, I think it's the tense of it. Right. That, I don't know. So, people once said I was that they were manic depressive. I was manic depressive, I think was the
right.
Right. And for me, that even sounds better than I am bipolar.
Right.
Because it's it sounds more descriptive. That's what it is. This is like saying, this is who I am. And I don't think it is.
It's these misconceptions and misunderstandings that lead people to keep their thoughts and feelings from others. It's also these misconceptions that lead people to speak out. Whether reluctantly or with a specific purpose, the folks we've been listening to say that telling their story in public has been a win-win. It's both therapeutic to speak out and educational to those willing to listen.
It's about a year and a half ago now. My husband died suddenly and unexpectedly, and I lived in a different state than all of my family, and people wanted to check in on me and stuff, and I got really exhausted by all of it, so I was kind of keeping people posted on what was going on with me and how I was doing on Facebook. And then I just kind of started like exploring my emotions and what they all mean and stuff like that, but on Facebook, and people were starting to really connect to it, like my friends and family. And then I joined a widows group called the Hot Young Widows Club, which is, the name is a joke. I heard about it from a different podcast. So I joined the group and stuff, and it's just because when you're widowed at a young age, it's a really different dynamic than when you're widowed at an older age. So I was like, I wanted to, find a community of people who understand what it's like, because it's kind of an isolating experience when you're in your 20s in particular to be widowed, because a lot of people haven't even been married before. And so I was dealing with a lot of different emotions with that. And so I joined the Hot Young Widows Club, and I would write about stuff in there. And people kept encouraging me to write a blog about all of it because they found it to be helpful, or they connected, or anything like that. So I eventually succumbed to people's wishes, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll write a blog. I was like very reluctantly started doing it. And if people continue to like reach out to me and tell me that they like it.
Well, I didn't write for about 4 years, from 2013 to about last year, because of the voices. Because writing is a very intimate experience for me. I write a lot of feelings, journaling, but I eventually started writing in last year. And I started my blog. And I was encouraged by my therapist. And several other psychiatrists and stuff, where they knew I had a talent for writing that I hadn't really been using. And, I'd bring in my old work, and I was like, this is from 10th grade. And they said, you have a way of expressing yourself. And what I have found is that there's not a lot of material out there from someone who is schizophrenic. A lot of the material is doctors about schizophrenia. I don't know. It's just been well received. I have something to say. It's not only therapeutic for me, but it helps others get an inkling of what I go through and what others go through.
Like I said, what really made me realize things when I was in the psych ward was even just talking to one person who is dealing with it and finding one person to connect with, and then maybe that becomes two people that you're speaking to. And I think that's the good part of social media, is that you don't have to be up in a video or whatever. You can just go on whatever social media platform you want, find people that you can talk to and be open with. There's a power to sharing your story, and the power is for you, but it automatically transfers to other people, because it's telling people, when you hear someone else share their story, it's telling you that it's okay to share your story. It's saying it's okay, you can do this. And it's healing. And it makes it easier to go through it, to hear those words come out of you. Because it's one thing for it to live in you, and even live between you and one other person, or your therapist or your psychiatrist or whomever, but to have it live out in public, it's scary, but there is such a healing power to it.